This program is proudly brought to you by Telecom Limited and Daytech.
Good night, Papua New Guinea. I'm Malcolm Wara, and welcome to another episode of Infocus. In this session, we discuss the insurance sector in Papua New Guinea. Joining us for discussions, we have Mr. Jeremy Norton, Group Chief Executive Officer of Capital Insurance Group. Jeremy, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Firstly, Jeremy, for the benefit of our viewers who may not be familiar, can you explain the concept of insurance?
Sure. Businesses and families have assets that are important to them, and what insurance does is it provides protection for those assets. So that if something unforeseen, something untoward happens, then there's a provision being made to replace those assets. So it's an important part of planning for the future, important part of financial planning, and to make sure there's a bit more stability in families' finances, business finances, and so on. So it's effectively paying a premium now to take out something that protects against something that may happen in the future.
Are there examples of the different types of insurance policies offered?
Absolutely, yeah. So the insurance falls into a few different groups. So one that most people are familiar with is property. So that can either be people's family homes or commercial properties and that kind of thing. There's also medical and life insurance, where the thing that's being insured is a person, whether it's their medical treatment or some financial provision in the event that they pass away. And there's also other forms of insurance, which are things like liability and more sort of legal and financial type insurances that protect against those kind of eventualities. But what all these things have in common is that during the course of life, things that we don't expect and can't foresee happen. And when those things do happen, people want to get back on their feet as quickly as possible and resume their lives, get their business operating again, do what they can as quickly as possible. And insurance is really there for that purpose, so that we can, people can resume their normal lives as quickly as possible.
Now, can you tell us a bit about Capital Insurance and its core mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So Capital's proudly a PNG company. We're headquartered in Port Moresby, and we've been in operation for over 20 years. And we're a full-service insurance company, and we offer all of the kinds of insurance that I mentioned before. And our customers are individuals, families, SMEs, and also large corporates. So we offer those services to all of those people. We have a footprint across the Pacific. Whilst PNG is our home, we do also have businesses in other parts of the Pacific, like Fiji and the Solomon Islands. And we, in terms of a mission for us, we see ourselves as playing a really important role in reducing volatility, both at the sort of macroeconomic kind of level in economies, but also at the family level too. And that helps sort of create the conditions for economic stability, which have sort of ripple-on effects through the economy. So we have a really important role to play in helping people plan for the future and making sure that their finances are stable. So we have an important mission in that, and we want to in PNG and in our other markets, we have another role, which is to increase awareness of the benefits of insurance and why we think people should take it out. So it's about education as well. It's about providing the service and making sure we can set people on their feet when something happens, but it's also about a role in financial literacy and making sure that we can provide the information to help people make those decisions.
Do you think the general population in Papua New Guinea, especially the economically active segment of our population, are they adequately informed of the importance of insurance?
I think there's always more work to do, and as an insurance company, as an industry, we need to continually work at that. Insurance is an interesting product and proposition because it's intangible, and to a large extent it doesn't really exist until something happens. So for many people, if you're lucky enough not to need to claim, the only time you may hear from your insurance company is once a year when you get a bill. And so what Capital does, and other insurance companies in the industry need to do, is to change that conversation and to make sure people have got the information as to what the benefits are. So I think we need to, we do provide our customers with that information. This week is important. It's been, this period of time has been Insurance Awareness Week, and part of that is to make sure we all take the time to think about our assets, how we protect them, and the whole concept of insurance. So there's more work to be done, but I think we're making good progress.
Thank you, Jeremy. We now go for a quick break. Join us on the other side for more discussions. Welcome back. You're watching In Focus. Now, Jeremy, how would you describe the current state of the insurance industry in Papua New Guinea?
It's an interesting time in the industry at the moment, and there's a number of things happening. I think importantly from an insurance landscape point of view has been some of the international players have withdrawn from the market in PNG and no longer offer services here. So that means all the insurers here are PNG companies. So I think that affords a great opportunity for PNG insurers to step up and really claim that space and offer great service, great products, and provide customers in PNG what they need. So I think the opportunity that's been a change. The market here for a long time has always had some international representation. So that now that's no longer there. It's time for the market to reform itself, and for PNG insurers to show what they're made of. And the way to do that is to listen to customers. Is to be close to communities, close to customers, and understand what people really want. And I think if the industry does that, we'll be well placed to provide solutions in a sustainable way. So I think that's the biggest factor affecting the market at the moment, is it's reforming. The competitive landscape is changing, and I think that will ultimately, there's benefits in that for the customers, provided the PNG insurers such as Capital will step up, own that place, that space, and provide what the market is after.
Okay. What sort of critical role do you think insurance companies in the insurance sector can play in the broader economic of Papua New Guinea?
Yeah, it's a good. I mean, I saw that where we've seen that recently illustrated very clearly has been with Bougainville. We recently, in the last 6 months, opened a small operation in Bougainville where there's been no insurance for over 20 years, and that was a really good example of how the overall economy suffers when you don't have a vibrant, competitive insurance landscape. And so we're hoping in the Bougainville context that being able to provide insurance services will help. But it does things like attract, it's an important precondition for attracting investment. Is making sure that people have their assets protected. So I think it's vital as we look for economic growth in PNG that's supported by the insurance sector, both for domestic business and its growth agendas, but also for attracting investment from outside.
Okay. Now, what would you say are some of the major challenges faced by the insurance industry?
I think the big thing affecting insurance globally is inflation. Globally, we're in a high inflation environment, and PNG is no different to anywhere else in that respect. From an insurance point of view, the things that we need to purchase to put people right when they've suffered a loss are all subject to inflation. So particularly things like car parts, building materials for houses if there's been a fire and a house needs replacing, medical supplies, and so for medical insurance and the claims there. These are items that are subject to inflationary pressure, both on the items themselves and on some of the logistics to get them to PNG. So that does flow through onto prices. and the rates that ultimately people are charged. So in a context where some people are finding, maybe struggling with cash flow, maybe feeling the pinch on the household budget, it can be difficult to articulate why there needs to be a rate increase in that context. But the input costs into insurance through claims inflation are significant. So I think that's one big challenge. As a business operating in PNG, the availability of FX is an issue that affects us like it does all businesses. We have quite a lot of our suppliers are overseas. Our reinsurance backing is often overseas and they need to be paid from PNG. So delays in FX and FX availability is an ongoing issue for businesses operating in PNG. So I think they're the two big things. But from a customer perspective, impact of inflation is important and does affect the price that people pay for what we offer.
How have you found the regulatory environment?
Yeah, I think the regulatory environment framework in PNG is strong. Sometimes we need to make sure it's enforced consistently and at all times. And I think that it is essential to having a thriving sector here in PNG. We must get that right. For insurance companies to thrive and to give customers the certainty that they need. So, look, I think like all regulatory frameworks, there's tweaks and there's improvements that can be made, but the framework itself is strong, and we just need to make sure it's always enforced.
Now, with the rapid technological change in the financial systems and services, to what extent has it impacted the insurance industry globally?
That's a great question, and I think globally people may be familiar of the rise of some of the insure-tech type companies, and that means you can service a large portfolio of insurance policies with high levels of technology. At the moment, insurance in the Pacific is ripe for some of that technological innovation. It's underwriting and claims and these kind of functions are still primarily done manually by all insurers across the Pacific. But I think the question that as insurers we have to ask ourselves and answer is, when technology provides a dividend in terms of efficiency, what do we do with that dividend? Now, my view, and I think where we'll be heading, is to try and reinvest that in the customer. What we don't want to see is a reduction in the number of jobs that the insurance industry provides. We don't want to see technology replacing humans doing the job. We want to grow the base of insurance professionals in the Pacific, not go the other way. So I think for me, the role of technology is important. I think for some of the underwriting stuff, a greater technological intervention is what the industry requires. We're an industry that relies on data and modelling and forecasting, and a lot of that is done better through technology. But where we have to ask ourselves those questions, as I say, is the responsible use of the dividend, the efficiency dividend that technology provides, and we want to see that reinvested in the customer, in sustainability, in developing the market of insurance professionals, and just having a long-term view on where that takes us.
Now, where do you see there potential opportunities for growth and innovation?
There's a couple of areas that I think come to mind there. So at the consumer end, I think as more and more people in PNG are starting to rely on their smartphones for things, insurance will be part of that, and capital is certainly looking at being on the front of the wave of that. So there are transactions that insurers can have with their customers that would be better facilitated or easily facilitated over a smartphone or from your PC at home. So for example, checking the status of a claim, checking your benefit limits on a medical insurance policy. These are things that we think people should have access to that information easily and at home without having to make the effort to come to an office or stand in a queue, these kind of things. So I think there's the customer stuff and what that means to the end user. I think the other part that's important is understanding risk and modelling and pricing risk. So particularly with things like earthquake exposure, getting more accurate understanding of the nature of the risks and the probabilities around them means that they can be priced more effectively. So ultimately, there's a better outcome for the consumer where the risk that's being covered is accurately reflected in the premium that the customer's paying. And the way to draw that relationship more closely together is through more technology, more data, more modelling, and getting the price to reflect the risk more closely. So I think there's a couple of opportunities that would benefit both the consumer and businesses.
Now, PNG is forecasted to have a couple of major resource projects that will be coming on stream soon. What opportunities will this present for the insurance industry in Papua New Guinea?
That's a really important question, and I think all insurance companies at the moment are thinking about that question. The insurance, the resources project themselves often require insurance backing from outside of PNG because they're at such a large scale that it's too big for the domestic market. Where there's real upside and opportunity for insurers like Capital is with the downstream effects of that. So it's the things that happen around the resource project itself. So less the sort of primary infrastructure that goes into the opening of those kind of projects, but it's the economic activity around it which provides great opportunities. So that's things like, workers' compensation type products, medical arrangements, some of the sort of motor and smaller property stuff that sits around those projects. So look, we welcome very much the progress of those projects, and it does provide opportunities for the market.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
We'll go for a quick break. When we return, we look at Capital Insurance's long-term vision. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching In Focus. Still in the studio with me is Mr. Jeremy Norton, Group Chief Executive Officer of Capital Insurance Group. Now, Jeremy, what is the company's strategic vision and long-term goal?
Whilst we'll always remain at heart and always be a PNG company, we do have ambitions to play a role across the region. We're already in 4 markets other than PNG, so we're continuing to look at the role we can play more broadly across the Pacific. But I think at the core of that expansion will remain the same things that are true to Capital here in PNG, and that's to provide insurance that is that's based on values, so things that people can relate to, and that's provided in a transparent and accessible way. Insurance can be complicated, and if you're not in the industry from the outside, it looks slightly opaque and complex. So we want to make it simple for people and transparent. We want to, when we make commitments and promises, we want to do what we say we're going to do, and we want to bring that message to far greater, wider audiences across the Pacific and become a PNG success story, a company that is based here but has a regional presence. And yeah, I think that'll be key for us is expansion, but not losing sight of where we've come from.
How would you describe your company's commitment to innovation and customer-centric solutions?
We've made some good progress, but we've got some more work to do too. We touched before on the role of technology, and I think like a lot of financial services organisations, they tend to evolve from the past where customers are expected to fit around the processes that the institutions offer. It needs to be the other way around. The customer needs to come first, and organisations need to orientate themselves around what the customer wants. So look, we're on that journey. We've got more work to do, but one of the very important parts of the strategy and our strategic vision is to move the customer far more centrally into that conversation, and we need to respond to what they want, not expect them to fit around what's important to us.
Now, how engaged and trustworthy do you find your relationship with your customers?
Our customers, I think, are engaged. On the question of truthfulness, I think the onus of responsibility is on us to make sure we are an entity that can be trusted. So I think we do a pretty good job of that. We need to, where that is, I think, front and centre is in the process of claims. If a customer's paid us premium in good faith over a period of time, they've suffered a loss of some sort, they didn't want it to happen, they want to be set right, put back on their feet quickly, and that's where we have to deliver on that commitment, and we need to make sure that they feel they can trust us. And I think that's crucial to us being successful for the long term.
It's a good segue into our next question, and it's in relation to your corporate social responsibility. Could you highlight for us some of the initiatives you run in the communities in Papua New Guinea and around the Pacific?
Yeah, I mean, an important part of who we are is to be an organisation that has a net positive impact on the communities that we work in. And that takes a number of forms. So we've run a number of initiatives recently where we've spoken to children in schools about the role that insurance plays in financial planning. I think it's really good that we get the next generation of people familiar with some of these concepts early and starting to think about what are the components of financial responsibility and financial planning into the future. We make it fun. I know for a lot of school kids, talking about insurance wouldn't be the most exciting thing, so we do try and make it as entertaining as possible. So that's one thing, is to get out into the next generation and start having those conversations early. The other thing is we've done recently is a number of initiatives around the environment and trying to be a responsible corporate citizen, looking at the kind of footprint that we leave and helping some of our clients and our customers make sure that they can be as responsible as they can with the sort of output of their business and making sure that we all leave a positive contribution.
Now, you mentioned the awareness around the insurance industry and the insurance sector as a whole. Every 20th June, the International Insurance Awareness Day is celebrated. Why is it important to have a designated day to commemorate the importance of insurance?
It's a really good question, and it's an important time to reflect on it at the moment. So I think unless something happens, unless somebody or a business or a family suffers a loss, insurance isn't top of mind and it's not a priority. So it tends to be lower down the list of things to think about. And people's insurance programs do require some maintenance and some thought and some adjustment. Perhaps you change your vehicle, or you move house, or you have a new family member that you want added to your policy, whatever it might be. So some of these things can remain lower order issues and never get addressed, or we don't get round to them. So what the Insurance Awareness Week is there for is to remind us all, just to pause, draw breath and think through what are the insurance what assets do I have? Are they insured? Is that insurance up to date? And do I need to do anything to make sure I've got the right arrangements in place? So it's important to do that and to remind people of what the benefits are and why it's important.
Mr. Jeremy Norton, thank you for joining us on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the program.
Well, viewers, that's all the time we have for this edition of Infocus. Do join us again next week, Monday at 7 p.m. Till then, good night.
This program was proudly brought to you by Telecom Limited and Daytech.